On this James the Bike Guy, we're taking a look at the Trek Fuel EX frame set. This is the aluminum frame set of the new 2020 Trek Fuel, and we're going to go over some of the features and design of this bike, check out some of its specs, as well as, of course, find out what this weighs. But before we get started taking a look at this bike, be sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you can see more videos like this into the future. So taking a look at this bike, really we should talk about who and what this Trek Fuel is for. So the Fuel EX is their all-mountain trail mountain bike. It's going to run a 130 millimeter travel rear end through their ABP design, which we'll talk about in just a bit. And in the complete bike format, it'll run a 140 millimeter travel front fork, but the frame has a max fork capacity of 150 millimeters of travel. So you can set this up and rake it out a little bit with that 150 millimeter travel fork, or you can run the recommended 140 millimeter travel front fork as well. The bike's gonna run a Boost 148 rear end, of course through axle. It's got an all aluminum rear chassis and aluminum front frame. And this is set up with what Trek calls their Alpha Platinum aluminum. So this is the highest degree aluminum that you can buy from Trek right now, which means it's going to be a completely drawn tubing. It's going to have shaping and hydroforming to it, and it's going to make the frame pretty light. Now the bike is also going to be set up with their Control Freak cable routing. So that means internal cable routing for dropper, for all your shifting, and even the routing for the bike's rear derailleur as well as brake setup. So it's really nice to see this very clean cable routing setup. Now the frame set is going to run a Fox Float Evolve reactive rear shock. In this particular case, it's the same frame, but this is from the Fuel EX7, so this has a Float DPS rear shock. The reactive one is going to have a bit better damping built in to adjust to this ABP suspension setup. And one of the major things that is new for this particular Fuel is going to be this fixed mount, lower mount for the shock. So this is a linkage driven suspension. So the linkage and the rocker link drives the suspension down. In previous iterations of the Fuel, this used to have what they would call their full floater design. So your lower chainstay would actually come forward and connect with the shock. And in this particular case, they're separated, and that's because Trek has done it to be able to get better performance out of this suspension, especially considering the shock technology has just gotten so much better. Looking down at the bottom bracket area, we can see this is a press fit 92 bottom bracket, which has an ISCG tabs around it, so you're able to run a chain guide or a bash guard, which is nice to see on this bike. The down tube of this bike is going to be very straight. They run something called their straight shot down tube. So if you take a look, it's a very straight line coming down from where the head tube is on the bike. By doing that, they make a much stiffer frame by having that straight tube. And that down tube comes up to our 1.125 to 1.5 tapered headset. So this tapered headset allows for a tapered steerer. You can see it's got pretty nice machining to the frame here. And this is going to run what they call their knock block. So the knock block is a little bit controversial out there because what it allows for is basically this tab can limit the steering angle out of your handlebars. And they do that because with a straight down tube shape, you don't want to worry about the fork crown coming around and slamming into the straight tube here. You'll see on a lot of other bikes, this would be pretty curved, and that's because it's clearanced to be able to run a wide fork that might contact the down tube. So if we take a look at the headset, you'll see the bearing slides right into the top, and you've got this little tab that comes up. You'll get this headset top cap that's got these machined portions in it, and if you take a look at that, it's going to allow this machined out portion to slide right on top of that notch. So it goes in there, and then simply now your headset can turn only a certain amount. You run into this stop. The other thing you'll notice is it's got a centering little V right there, which lines up that line so you can make sure that you get everything aligned properly. Now you might be saying, well, if that's how knock block works, how's it going to keep the stem from rotating around too? You'll notice on the stem, which does come with a frame set and of course any of the Trek fuels, it's going to have these two small notches out of it as well, which means you could run the stem flush if you wanted to, and it's going to lock out and not be able to go further. Or the headset spacers actually come together just like Legos. So you can see clicks together here. These can go on the top, and then you can add your stem, and there you are, which is going to help protect the frame from damage in the event of a crash. So while talking about preventing damage, we should also check out the underside of the frame here. You can see it's got this awesome rubberized guard, which is going to help keep the down tube in good shape, because this is often a place that you're going to have a lot of the damage or a lot of the potential strikes to happen is right here, because your chainring set is going to be just behind, and so this can be a leading edge for some of the different transitions that you might go through. While we're down here, we should mention that this is going to have a 34 tooth max chainring capacity, so plenty of room to run a big chainring, and it is of course going to be 1x only. So now let's talk about the rear end of the bike. So this being an ABP bike, that means it's going to have what they call their active braking pivot. So if we unscrew this boost through axle and take a look, you'll see this is what the ABP is. And it's going to be a concentric bearing that actually splits between the seat stay and the chain stay. So I'm going to get this in an angle where you can see, and you'll notice that the bearing is actually in between your seat stay and your chain stay. And that's done on purpose because what that allows for is the rotation of the suspension or the rear axle, which is going to help keep the brake from having much of an impact on the suspension performance. And in the back of this suspension, we're going to see something that's really neat and on a lot of bikes now, but Trek was one of the first to really do it. So this is going to run what they call their Minnow Link setup. It's basically this oval pivot that you can flip from one direction to another. And the magic with doing that is even trail side, you can adjust the geometry of the bike by ½ a degree at the head tube. And that's going to make for a bit different personality out of this bike. It's also going to allow you to adjust that personality when, say, you change tire size or say you change fork size. On the topic of tires, this does fit up to a 29 by 2.6 tire, so you can get a nice beefy tire in there, and that is what these bikes are going to come with. So the geometry on this medium-large bike is going to be set up where you're looking at a head angle of 66 degrees in the low position or 66.5 in the high position, a 75.5 degree seat tube angle or 70 degree seat tube angle in the low position. It's going to have a seat tube length of 435 millimeters, which means it's going to be compatible with some pretty long dropper posts. And then the frame stack and reach in high position is going to be a reach of 46 centimeters and a stack of 60.9 centimeters. And chainstay length is going to be pretty reasonable with only 435 millimeters of length. So now that we've taken a look at some of the features and designs of this Trek Fuel EX aluminum frame set, let's go ahead and find out what this thing weighs. With our scale zeroed out, we'll place the frame right on, and we'll see that this frame set comes out at a really reasonable 3,417 grams. And to put that into perspective, my Hightower LT at 3,098 grams. So thanks so much for watching this video on the Trek Fuel EX. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts on this aluminum frame set. Would you build a bike out of it? What do you think about it? And while you're at it, be sure you hit the subscribe button as well as leave a thumbs up. It lets me know that you enjoyed the video.